This is Philadelphia 76ers now, and coming up, a Joel Embiid injury update after he got hurt against the Golden State Warriors. And as part of that, a major problem is arising in the NBA with some load management, money being taken away, and really, Joel Embiid kind of forced to play last night against the Golden State Warriors as part of those issues. We'll explain further coming up here in just a little while. So let's set the stage. On Tuesday night in San Francisco, Joel Embiid limped off the court after being down for several minutes after Jonathan Kuminga fell on his knee. He is set to have an MRI, as confirmed by head coach Nick Nurse, after the Sixers lost to the Golden State Warriors. A lot of thoughts on this and details coming up, but type those 2 ones in the chat to send Joel Embiid some love. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to reach the benchmark to be eligible for NBA MVP, and that's what we're going to talk about here on today's show, because the rules that were signed on by the NBA Players Association are kind of a joke, and now you're looking at Embiid getting robbed of winning NBA MVP, and a player like Tyrese Haliburton who's going to get cost millions of dollars because he's probably not going to be named to an All-NBA team. As for the latest, let's pivot back to Joel Embiid. Re-aggravated his left knee injury against Indiana. He stayed in the game. He was clearly bothered. He was not on the initial injury report against the Denver Nuggets, and then he was ruled out 15 minutes before the game against Denver. The medical staff saying Joel Embiid could not jump in warm-ups. And Embiid has had a special season up to this point. But according to reports, he's feeling all of this pressure from the national media and from these new rules to have to play so that he can be eligible to win NBA MVP. And because of that, he may have further injured his knee. And this is becoming a growing problem in the NBA. So he plays Tuesday against the Warriors, and he was clearly favoring his knee from the start, limping around, not feeling healthy. He's missed the last few games. He didn't look to be 100% or in sync, in rhythm. He goes into the locker room multiple times before the knee injury. So why was he playing? There's also a threshold of minutes that a player needs to play in those games on top of the totality of games they need to play to be eligible for something like NBA MVP. Here's what Nick Nurse had to say, because obviously the head coach is going to get pressed about it when an MVP candidate is in the game, clearly not right, and he's still playing. He said, so obviously medical cleared him. Joel obviously is a big part of that. He said he was feeling good. He said he's a little rusty, hadn't been on the court for 5 days, but he said he felt good. He obviously got landed on, so they're going to do an MRI. It's kind of unrelated to what's been bothering him, so we'll just wait on that. You guys saw that play. He kind of got landed on. Here's the thing. Joel Embiid should not have been playing in this game. Like you, I agree that it's very frustrating that Embiid is always injured. And over the last couple of years, playing great basketball, either winning MVP or in the running for MVP. Then what happens when it comes time for the NBA playoffs? He gets hurt. His injury luck is bad. He's been a little bit brittle. But you got to hold out hope that he's going to be right for the playoffs. You want to have the opportunity for him to at least be on the floor. So if he misses some of these regular season games, that's fine. Because then has some gas left in the tank and health can be on his side in the playoffs. But if he continues to get hurt in the regular season or further some of these injuries, right, then he's just not going to be right for the playoffs. He's going to be cooked, and then the Sixers have no shot because as we've seen this year, when he's been out of the lineup, this is a pretty mediocre to bad team because he's such a great player. Embiid looked tentative. He looked indecisive. He looked unsure of himself. 17 of his 18 shot attempts were jump shots. So clearly, he's not feeling right to get pushed off on that knee, to try to back you down to create some physicality and some space to be able to maneuver in the trenches, which is a strong suit of his game. Now, why would Embiid push himself through this injury? It could be exposing a new problem within the NBA and these new rules. What are they? I've teased them so far. Further details coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's 76ers Now is sponsored by Factor. Get 50% off when you use the code NBAChat50, America's best ready-to-eat meal delivery service where everything is delivered right to your door. Chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals. You can choose from dozens of them. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, protein, keto, veggie, whatever you want. Factor Meals has you covered. And you can get several meals per week. So skip the meal planning, skip the grocery store, skip the cleaning up after having to do that meal prep. I'm always on the move, covering the NFL, covering the NBA. I'm very, very busy, so sometimes I don't have time to do all of those aforementioned things, even though I like to eat healthy. But I like to eat healthy. That's why I like Factor. So you can pick your pre-made meals, prepped and cooked to perfection. You heat them up and you enjoy them. Factormeals.com/NBAChat50. Use that link in that promo code. You get 50% off. All right, going back to that question that I posed a little bit earlier. Why has Embiid been playing through injury? Here's what Sam Amick of The Athletic had to say. You could see it long before he was hurt against the Warriors. Embiid, who missed Philadelphia's game at Portland on Monday night, looked like a player who pushed himself to play against Golden State because the whole basketball world was screaming in his ear. There are people within the Sixers who were convinced that he only played because of all the scrutiny. And the narrative around Embiid in the NBA world, it's kind of a joke. I get it. He's come up short in the playoffs a couple of times, but he's a special player. He's one of one. The finesse of Hakeem Olajuwon, the physicality of Shaquille O'Neal. He has an offensive arsenal as far as how he can get buckets like a Kobe Bryant, fade away, pull up, three-pointers, putting the ball on the deck, rip-through move like James Harden. He has all of these special skills that we really haven't seen from a big throughout the entire course of NBA history. I mean, you think back to what he did in December, his last full healthy month, multiple incredible performances and averages that were pushing at points in that month, almost 40 points per game. Nobody gets more hate for being injury-riddled than Joel Embiid. But you also have to factor in, he overcame 3 consecutive years to start his career in which he didn't play because of injuries. Then he plays. He gets hurt again. From that point, he's actually been somewhat relatively healthy. Don't you like watching special? Don't you watch something one of one? You say that to yourself and you're like, wow, this is certainly a luxury. That's what we have every single night for Joel Embiid. The guy is also 7 foot, 280 pounds, and it's hard to stay healthy when you're that large and you're that agile. There might be more to this story, though, and that's what we want to get to here. Prior to the season, the NBA adopted a new player participation policy. I get it. Players sitting out like Kawhi Leonard. It was getting out of hand with the whole load management era, and I do think that NBA players are a little bit entitled. They're a little bit soft as compared to back in the day. These athletes are the best that we've ever seen. The level of talent in the NBA is probably as deep as we've ever seen, but I'm not going to lie to you. Like, when I turn on NBA on TNT, NBA on ESPN, it becomes a bummer. It becomes tough to watch when these players are healthy and they're sitting out. And it's not just sitting out one game. They're sitting out routinely. The regular season is 82 games. You have some of these star players who are playing 55, 60. I get you want to be right for the playoffs, but for the NBA, you want better ratings. You want players to play a little bit more. The solution is not a dumbass policy like this. The policy that I think would work best and what would increase revenue, increase TV ratings, increase player participation and interest in the league, you knock down the regular season to 60 games. The product becomes so much better, and then the games mean more. And right now, you're watching Joel Embiid sitting out, you're watching Tyrese Haliburton sitting out, then they try to play, they get further injured, and these all-pro caliber players aren't able to play then because of those injuries. And then before that, you have Kawhi Leonard just sitting out as well, and you're like, I want to see stars, okay? Like, I don't want to see these scrubs taking the floor in a game in the regular season that doesn't really mean anything. And that's the bummer right now with where the NBA is. And it's pretty telling that last week, South Carolina and LSU women's basketball got higher ratings on the telecast than pretty much any NBA game this year. That's a joke. And that's because fans aren't really invested in a league in which they don't know what they're getting night in, night out. And they know these regular season games don't really matter. Why is that? Because the players don't care about them. So the NBA Player Participation Trophy era is a problem, and this policy is a joke. The new CBA, which went into effect in July, mandates that players must appear in a minimum of 65 games and play a minimum of 20 minutes in those games to remain eligible for any of the aforementioned regular season accolades. So Embiid is trying to get to that 65-game threshold. Why is he in the game? Because he feels as though he needs to play 20 minutes to be in the running for NBA MVP. So this means that players can only miss 17 games. And you look at the notable players who have missed the amount of games that they've missed. Jimmy Butler's at 15. Tyrese Haliburton's at 13. Joel Embiid now is at 12. He feels that pressure. Devin Booker is at 9. And Donovan Mitchell is at 9. But then when ratings do matter the most in the NBA is in the NBA playoffs. And now we might not see some of these players because of further injury or they're not playing up to their standard. It's not just about awards, though. There are financial incentives at stake here, which are dramatic. Tyrese Haliburton, and this is not a misprint, can get a $54 million raise if he makes an All-NBA team this season. However, if he misses just 5 more games, then why would he risk further injury given the impact and his meaning to Indiana? He'll be ineligible to make an All-NBA team. So it's written in his contract that he can get all that money if he's an All-NBA player. And here's what Tyrese Haliburton had to say. I think it's a stupid rule, like plenty of the guys in the league, but this is what the owners want. So as players, we got to do our job in playing 65 games if we're able to. So that's what I got to do, take care of my body to be able to play in those games. And I think you're seeing other players in the league kind of face the same thing as long as the owners are happy. Look, the NBA world has been sounding off for a little while, and this is the problem in corporate America. This is the problem in sports. These owners are making billions and billions and billions of dollars. Even if nobody goes to their games, the bank account is still pretty and they're still profiting because the profit margins are crazy and they're still billionaires. Yet it comes down to greed in corporate America, in politics, and in sports. It's all about greed all the time when it comes to the cash flow. And believe me, I care about my cash flow. You know, as I've climbed the ranks in broadcasting, I used to live paycheck to paycheck. Now, I'm a little bit more comfortable. I can enjoy things in life. So I get it from that standpoint. But to set a limit for the amount of games that players have to play, and then they might risk further injury, the owners are worried about trying to make money and having those players play. But if the Sixers go out in the playoffs because Embiid is injured, they're not going to make the amount of money that they could have if Embiid was 100% healthy. You see what I'm saying here? Here's what Draymond Green had to say, and I certainly see eye to eye with him. Joel Embiid playing tonight felt very solely because of the 65-game limit, which I think is quite bullshit. Now, we got one of the premier faces of this league possibly hurt because he's forcing it. And then Jamal Crawford said this, we all want these guys to play, but if we're risking further injury or compensation or anything for that, we'll have to look at that. They shouldn't have to risk themselves and their livelihood to say, I need to meet a quota to be eligible for this stuff. And then there's Vince Carter. Here's the problem. Haliburton played, but is he playing because of that, for that money? Is he risking injury? I think the NBA in a tough position, you're going to need tweaks. You're getting situations like a Haliburton, Embiid, clearly playing at an MVP level, but he's clearly injured right now. Now, I understand the NBA Players Association approved it, and it's kind of the issue with the NBA over the last, 5 to 8 years. The players have shot themselves in the foot as far as the league goes, but the alternative was a lockout. Nobody wants that because then nobody gets money at all. So my take here, this has clearly become a problem with the players, something that needs to be done by Adam Silver this offseason, who this week on Sunday, just signed a contract extension for the rest of the decade. Now, is the NBA at fault for Embiid's injury? I'm going to say yes, because he feels the pressure to play. Give me a Y for yes, N for no. Let me know what you're thinking down below in the comments section. We appreciate you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe to us here on 76ers Now, your go-to spot for Sixers coverage.